Welcome to the Center of Destiny podcast, a sanctuary to amplify visionary perspectives, deepen our shared humanity, and empower the architects of collective destiny. I am your host, Tara Dow. Let's begin. Today is a really special episode. So I am joined by one of my deepest allies in this lifetime and the co-creator, co-founder of the Love Fast, Gabrielle Bodzin, who is a family scientist, a Gestalt psychotherapist, a Jewish mystic, and truly my best friend. It's so exciting that we get to join together on this episode and really as we near the first cohort of the Love Fast, which is a 4-month sacred pause to date yourself. This is a potent conversation on what it means to really heal and repair and evolve from limerence-based patterns, or just, let's say, outdated templates of the way that we have loved, the way that we attracted love, the way that we've been in love, and to ultimately come home to the greatest relationship we could ever have, which is with ourselves, and to actually sanctify periods and windows of time where we devote to the cultivation of what self-love really is and the self-actualization that comes from that. And then, of course, to ultimately date from that version of evolved self.
I would just love to say that you, Tara, have been one of the most evolutionary connections and relationships of my life. I'm so honored to be recording this with you. I'm so looking forward to being able to record one of our conversations. Whenever I talk with you, I feel so expansive and I feel like I'm being brought to the edge of my evolution. Like I feel this constant sort of like breaking open of realizations and awakening. The truth that pours through you is so powerful and reflective and precise. And I think what we're doing here in our relationship, which I'm sure we'll speak to, which could be a podcast of its own, is we're decentralizing romance as a means, as a tool of healing from these patterns and creating a sense of that necessary survival need for belonging so that we don't seek out these unhealthy sort of toxic patterns in romance, looking for something that is actually really abundant and available in all of these other relationships in our lives. And that's part of what we'll be teaching on in the course and how to actually show up for and cultivate that literally. Like, what does that actually look like? Because that's not what I was taught. Most of the time, I was taught about like talking about boyfriends and men or partners, people I was dating with my girlfriends, not what it means to actually water and nurture the seeds of our dharma, of our legacy, of what our greatest excitement and deepest creativity looks like. And I feel all of that has unfolded with you. And that is the birthplace of the Love Fast. So just orienting that context for whoever is listening. And that's how we've gotten here.
What you're naming is paradigm shifting, it is revolutionary, and it is a very big pattern disrupt that we are here to be voices on, because you're exactly right of how much we are taught, how much we are fed, and dispositioned to really prioritize romantic relationship as the greatest reflection of what love is in this life, where we rarely talk about, the union of sisterhood or the union between you and God or the union between you and nature, the you and body. So really what we're doing here is widening and expanding that conversation, and realizing love at the center of destiny. So yes, babe, let's go.
Let's go.
As a Gestalt psychotherapist, a licensed therapist, I would love to invite you to talk about what is limerence? How can we define that for our listeners?
Yes. So limerence was coined in the 70s by this American psychologist named Dorothy Tenev. And she was trying to capture the essence of this state of almost trance and fantasy that she noticed her patients going through whenever they would have a new love connection. A lot of people talk about this as like new relationship energy, or sort of that like high that you get, this like flood of sort of obsessive thoughts. You might feel hijacked, you're preoccupied, you sort of like find a little bit of an escape in a new connection before you actually have the information about whether this person or potential partner is aligned for you. In fact, might even overlook obvious red flags that you come to realize were very present later on and might have felt very subtle and almost imperceptible when you were in the limerent state. And so there's an actual definition for limerence, which is an involuntary state of intense and obsessive romantic infatuation and longing for emotional reciprocation. She coined this term in her book, Love and Limerence: The Experience of Being in Love. And she was trying to distinguish the difference between love, lust, and limerence. We can get into all the nuances of that, but limerence is specifically different than love. It feels like love, it replicates love, but this gets into a different conversation about what really is love, which is something that I believe unfolds over time and is built with trust. Yes, you can recognize a soulmate immediately. You can feel a deep connection, new layers of the self reflected back to you in a timeless way, absolutely, and experience a sense of unconditional love for all people everywhere. But the difference between limerence is that you're ready to almost devote or commit or reshape your entire life, and you start fantasizing about and thinking about a future with someone that hasn't yet earned or shown what their values are, their integrity. They haven't really followed through or given you reason to be making those choices or giving them that much energetic space in your life. And it can be akin to any other kind of addiction that's out there. It's not about not feeling love in your life and not having new relationship energy, but it's about the distinction and the nuance that specifically limerence will pull you out of being in your own alignment because it's so intoxicating and it's so addictive, and it replicates a lot of the same early attachment needs that we have, mammals as beings. Like, it can replicate a lot of the same neurochemistry we might have felt when we were maybe in the womb or when we were breastfeeding or just deeply and closely attached, but the other person hasn't earned that attachment from you yet. And yet the brain is creating all of the same neurochemistry, which can create a lot of stories and narratives about what the connection is in a kind of delusional way.
Mm, thank you for that. And what I'll add to that is I feel like limerence can be akin to another way to say that we are projecting an overlay onto another, as if we're assigning to this person all of these fantasies or
Yeah.
ideas of what we'd like them to be, how they make us feel. It's like if you've been someone who's longed for partnership or long for the one, you dream of marriage, you dream of that moment in your wedding dress, or, a life of family, whatever that is. And rightfully so, that lives in all of us. With limerence or with projection and overlay, it's like without what you're saying, without the evidence and the maturity of relationship that can only be cultivated over, let's say, months and years of time of really going through rites of initiation as a couple, really seeing through how the relationship responds to the many different things that will happen and impact us as individuals, and who sustains through all of those different waves of life, right? We can sometimes project onto someone that they can be that thing because we so badly want them to be, because we're so deeply wanting to finally satiate that longing. But a lot of the time, the limerence-based love truly does not have the sustenance or the ground. And what I'd love to say is that it hasn't fully grounded itself in physicality. It's an idea at this point. It's it's thoughts in your own mind, and sometimes we're not even communicating fully to another what is happening in our mind. Therefore, it's not actually relational fully or a fully grounded and rooted connection yet.
I think the other piece of it that is really interesting is the piece around self worth, right? Like who falls into limerence versus who doesn't? Like, what is the environment that we need to be nurtured in and cultivated for our brains to not have this pattern? And I think it's important to name this like larger systemic narrative and cultural story that we have about like family being this nuclear family system. So in undergrad, I studied something called family science, and it really kind of unpacked how for hundreds of thousands of years as mammals and for tens of thousands of years as Homo sapiens, we didn't evolve in a nuclear family system that was siloed and separated. We evolved in the context of community, sharing love in intergenerational ways, like in a very decentralized way. And so when we have this concept that's missing in our culture will be fixed when I find the love of my life, that puts a lot of pressure and weight on one single relationship, and people die, people get sick. Like we actually have a relational need that's so much bigger than the context of just one singular relationship. But I think it plays upon the attachment. Like we are a species that likes to pair bond, which means that we do like to be in coupleship dynamic relationships. And how do we do that in a way that's grounded in a context of village and also where we're assessing for another person's capacity to actually meet us before having the expectation that they will, and then giving them this attachment before they've necessarily proven that capacity or reciprocate in that feeling of mutuality. And this is where the self-worth piece comes in, because if they don't have the capacity, or if they're not, the timing is not aligned, which is a whole other conversation we could have about karma and like lifetimes, etc., we start to make the narrative that we're not good enough. And that spiral, that looping, I'm not good enough, is the original attachment wound that we are trying to seek repair through. So I think limerence is somewhat adaptive. Like we're attempting to repair the original abandonment wound that I would say all humans carry on some level, just separating from the womb. I mean, if you think about how we were warm, fed, comfortable, cozy, literally completely attached to another body, and then we get ripped out and we spend a lot of our lives trying to get back to that oneness. Oftentimes, it's a separation from union, from our original oneness state of being. And we try to find that in a lover and trying to replace, we could use the word God, source, universe, that inherent interconnectedness, that which from we originate with one single person. We are setting ourselves up for obsession, loss of self, the feeling that we're unworthy if it's not reciprocated, rather than holding the context of the other person's capacity and what's going on in their karma, in their lives, and that it's actually not so personal. But we have to kind of build that resource of being whole and creating that very deep intimate bond with self, with spirit, with community, so that we don't fall into those limerence patterns. I see it less as like, let me heal this addiction and like get rid of something, and more, how do I build a more full whole life so that this can kind of recede into the background and doesn't kind of overtake my way of moving through the world. And the last piece here is like, we're not going to get to our deathbed and wish we spent more time obsessing over the guy, the girl, the they, or the them who didn't end up being a particularly big part. I mean, of course, everyone is life changing, like interactions we have are meaningful, but does it necessitate that we spend all our time obsessing and being preoccupied? I'm not going to wish I sat at the dinner table with my alive family members while they're here thinking more about someone that didn't end up taking a significant role in my life in a legitimized, concrete way. Yeah.
So I'm sure at some point, I know I can speak for myself, I know you can speak to it, but for those that are listening, at this point, we've probably already recalled whether we're in a situation that is bringing out resonance to what we're talking about, or you've been in a situation like that. What we're really offering here is not just the naming of how this is very common, how this happens to the best of us, but really speaking to what is the antidote? Like, what is it that is going to resolve these patterns for us, which is why we created the Love Fast, a sacred pause to date yourself. And I'll speak to why this course feels so important. On a personal level, I have such a passion in this lifetime for really empowering the union of two souls coming together that truly benefit their individual evolution, but also really benefit those around them. Like, to me, that really speaks to what evolutionary love is. It is also decentralized in the way of we're not just coming together to meet needs for one another, but actually in an evolutionary relationship, we're coming together to decentralize the love that we have together. And we pour that love like a toroidal field from our union back into our communities, back into land, back into our individual and collective projects, back into our raising of children, if that's something that you choose. I really feel the generative relationships have a North Star, and that North Star is that because we are together, it benefits all sentient beings, or in other words, it benefits those around us. And so, really, when we can come into a union like that, I truly believe that the only way that we can authentically show up for a relationship in that way is creating such a strong, such a resilient and authentic relationship with knowing ourselves and actually with a source much greater than ourselves. Because whether you resonate with the word God, universe, creator, spirit, what I will say on a very practical level is that when the inevitable moment happens that you are dating someone and they are activating your attachment wounds, you're triggered. It is so easy for us to build a relationship out of making wrong another or projecting onto them all of the things that we wish they would change in order for us to have a better relationship or for them to make me happier, right? And that's inherently flawed because we're placing on a human being, which is being human is inherently flawed. We are so multidimensional and we have so many parts of ourselves. So there is an acceptance that we need to have of the imperfection of our partner. When that imperfection comes up and we're expecting another to change in order for us to feel better, of course, communicating that which we as a couple can work on, that which I can work on individually. But I'm really interested in a partner and being a partner that actually places something greater than each other in the forefront, because from that place, I can trust that if I am connected to God, I trust that that will continue to orient me in a healthy way and to show up beyond my own shadows and patterns and show up to the relationship continuously as a healthier version of self, and trust that my partner can do the same, and really placing that quality of best thing I can do for you is to work on myself, and the best thing you can do for me is to work on yourself. And also, let's not project that the okayness of life is coming from each other, but actually coming from connection to source, land, God, and something greater than ourselves. And let's meet in that place.
I think an important piece of what you're saying here is twofold. We have to be able to be in that connection so much, in the surrender of the devotion to what the calling is of our lives, that we are okay to leave. I was in a 6-year relationship where I really felt like my partner was so connected to source. And I felt so connected to source. And that resonance of our reverence, our ability to grieve, our ability to praise, our ability to pray was in alignment. It absolutely was in resonance and alignment. And that made me feel like we were this perfect match to be in divine union, to create a legacy, to build a life together. But there were actually so many practical elements missing. And there was such a deep attachment bond that formed because we were so young when we met and had these attachment needs we were trying to heal together. We stayed a lot longer maybe than we really needed to. And I think I spent a lot of time. I actually did a closing ceremony of our relationship with him last night as I'm leaving the home I've been in and lived with him in for 4 years. And he reflected to me something really interesting about how we can repeat these familial patterns that we have with each other by trying to like fix our partner and get so lost in that we self abandon. I think the nuance or the paradox of this is like, yes, when you're in a partnership and you notice that you're trying to heal what is preoccupying you about the relationship so that you're okay, and actually you need to come back inward and check in about all the ways that this is showing up in you. That's a very alchemical mirror like process. And and the nuance here is sometimes what you're being shown is that you're actually not in alignment. And what would it take for you to feel safe enough to leave? Because in my case, I was stuck in a holding pattern for many years because I was like, "Oh, I'm doing that thing where I'm self-abandoning and making my whole life about healing my relationship. I need to come back to healing myself and being with my life." But actually, I couldn't do that in the context of that relationship. And so it's a paradox, right? Because I think there is a beauty in the devotion of staying and looking at oneself. But what is the actual context in which that ability to, that's a deep question I get from a lot of my clients. Like, do I stay or do I go? And I think the confusion of living in that question makes me actually want to go back to the beginning of the relationship and say, well, how did this really start? And I think when we think about the why of this course, the reason that we're creating it is because we're trying to prepare people who are at the beginning of wanting to go on a journey in love to be in a place where they can actually assess from a place of clarity, from a place of inner knowing, from a place of building out a whole life around them that they can be anchored in. So that, let's say that you are no longer in relationship and something devastating happens, it's not like you have to pick your life back up from scratch and all of the pieces fall apart. You are whole and living your life not for the sake of being that independent person that doesn't need no man or need anyone, but from the place of like, I am me, you are you. And the idea is that what could unfold as one of the many potential realities is that when we come together, our respective missions or collective mission is amplified in each other's presence. And if we start from a place of limerence or lust or delusion and we're not seeing the full picture, then we'll spend the rest of the relationship trying to make it the picture that we had in our fantasy mind, not what we were actually being shown. So it's like, how do we discern or see at the very beginning what a person's capacity is, not what their feelings for us are, not what our feelings for them are, but what their actual capacity is. And if there's a resonance beyond just spirit, and if it really lands and grounds in human form, because I'm sure a lot of folks listening to this have met many a soulmate or people that they've met and recognized, and we're like, wow, now I know a dimension of consciousness, of beingness, and I really want to explore this and go on this journey. But that doesn't necessarily land itself in what will actually bring you to a deeper sense of alignment in your life and what it is that you're being called here to do. In fact, I believe that the universe will kind of pretty much remove anything that isn't going to bring us into deeper alignment. And so if you notice yourself getting carried away with a new connection, losing your own excitement, eros, aliveness, and integrity with your path and mission. And it's not to say we can't get excited about a person, but like if we start getting lost and kind of knocked off path, you know they're going to be taken away. So we better be doing this work for that right person when they come along for us to be truly available for them. So spirit will allow it to land and ground in our lives.
I mean, I remember Gabby and I were in Aspen and we knew that we were on the precipice of birthing something. It was so much fun to bring this together. And also, it was so natural and just like so obvious that this is the thing that in our own union we wanted to co create together. And so, Gabrielle has her pieces that she's absolutely bringing into the field and holding for those that are going to join us. And what I will name is some of the energetic architecture that has sort of that is energetically and maybe even invisibly, but also impactfully informing this field. And so The reason why I bring this up is because under one of the lineages that I study, which is the Quero people, the high Andes people of Peru, they are generational shamans, and some of the frameworks that we're bringing in this process is really held within a medicine wheel. And so the medicine wheel used in this context is all about integration, and it's all about the whole self. How does a soul that has come into an inherent imperfection of lineage and trauma and developmental ruptures, culture, patriarchy, colonization, all the ways that our nervous systems have been hijacked and compassionately so are trying to resolve itself? The medicine wheel, when we really go through the direction, it is a journey of wholeness. And very briefly, when we talk about the South, it's all about safety. It's all about belonging. It's physical body, it's nervous system. It's also the place that we heal fragmentation and we retrieve lost parts of the soul. In the West, this is all about relationality and our place of power, our seat of power. It's individuality and knowing of oneself. It's how are we felt in our relationality, in our greater community, and how do we let ourselves be visible in that place? Where do we need better discernment and boundaries and sense of power and worth? Then we go into the North, and this is the realm of the ancestors. It's where all the transgenerational healing happens of the mother's line, the father's line. Most of us are carrying some form of pattern or resolution that's trying to happen through the nervous system that's actually been passed down somewhere along our lineage, and that we're trying to rectify and actually create that new pattern and update that information within. We're updating our operating systems to be sovereign and create a new story. And then in the East, this is visionary. It is new, let's call it new earth, new timeline. It's purpose. It's walking in relationship individually and also in partnership or in community or in sisterhood with a sense of vision and knowing yourself in the role, knowing your role in the web of life. So, why am I bringing this up? Because it's a journey of the whole self. And I know when I look back at every single relationship that I have attracted, that I have learned from, if I really, and that did not sustain, let's make that clear, that is not coming with me into the future timelines with so much respect and reverence for every single one as they were needed. I can look at those aspects of the wheel and as a mirror, see how there were aspects of those, realms inside of myself that were not fully coherent, not fully aligned. I was holding elements of fragmentation in all aspects of those directions. And I can see so clearly how that is represented in the partnerships that I have attracted, and then how much that relationship was trying to mirror me, the process of repair that I was actually seeking for myself.
And this is what's so beautiful about bringing our unique training. We could call it like interests, curiosity, maybe some natural gifts we can throw in there. I am a Leo after all. But like it's the way in which you're studying these deep esoteric philosophies and these ancient wisdom traditions that are really that have been here to serve humanity like from the beginning of time. And then I'm really interested also in that and study in my own way. But like what I really have devoted my life to is like, what is the literal biochemical, like, what is the interpersonal neurobiological underpinnings? What is going on in our neurology that is contributing to these states of dysregulation? And I think on the one hand, like, you know, for people that are living in the West in modern times, we want to have the information. We are a very like logic based, intellect based society. And so I think like what's missing are the more like spirit based and like esoteric, mythological, archetypal teachings. And then on the other hand, I think that people that do study those things in the West in particular are hungry to know, but how does this actually take shape and form? And so we're both holding these really beautiful orientations to the healing process. And that's why it's so magical when we come together. It's like we're creating this like beautiful, I don't know, this geometry that really is like weaving together like a new paradigm or way of looking at the healing process. And that is partially like, you know, this course being birthed like through us it was like, sort of, what is the offering that we're meant to have, given that every time we come together, this is where we end up. It's like the same different fingers pointing at the same moon, but like completing this picture, this like larger picture. And so this is why this course, and why me too for this course.
I think some of the people joining this course are going to really enjoy the wholeness that you and I truly offer. And I think the intersections are that we are both most interested in transformation and healing at a somatic based level, not theorized, not just like we're not just going to like do PowerPoints where you learn about what is limerence and like what signs do you have that would say that you might be in a limerent pattern, but it's actually giving you embodied ritual, embodied tools, embodied teachings, and education, psychoeducation that really, on a holistic level,
Yes.
gets your mind, your body, your nervous system, and your spirit in coherence. And
And in a
that's,
completely different state.
yeah,
Information isn't like um, a thought based trying process. It's where you are in a different reality and you're like, oh my God, the other one feels so far away. Who is that? It's like disidentifying. And that's the whole death rebirth process. It's about actually transforming these patterns. And now I can say, after having like been through this love fast and walking through this past year of taking many months to be celibate and with self and not date and not be in any kind of relational dynamic of attachment bonding through a romantic lens, truly decentralizing love and centralizing my relationship with legacy and spirit, partially through the birthing of this course and studying all of these things, that as I enter back into the field of opening to what connection might look like in that way, I'm a completely full transparency. It's like a completely different reality. It's a completely different nervous system. I mean, you even know in our conversations, Tara, that like it's a completely different self that's now orienting. And I will say at first, when I started healing the limerence pattern, it was one of the most boring. Maybe this would be a good moment if it's okay to like share a little bit about what happened in the beginning. So when I first, so my story is a little different. I think for some people, it would take, let's say, like getting to a point of being so saturated in the dynamics of dysfunction that they were like, okay, like I need a break. It was that for me on some level, but I actually went through a violation of boundaries erotically and sexually. And that cut off my eros at the beginning of last year. And it was actually the biggest gift of my entire life, genuinely gave my whole life back to me in a sense, because in that process, I no longer wanted to date. I no longer wanted to share any kind of energy. My actual desire for self pleasure went out the window. I was just like I wanted very innocent, like wholesome community, friendship, connection. And in that process, I remember that the first and primary feeling that I felt was incredible boredom. I had no high to look forward to, no one I was waiting on a text from, no one that I was like waiting to engage with or have like some kind of romantic oxytocin, dopamine need filled with, and no sexual connection that I was entertaining. And I remember feeling so bored. And someone asked me recently, so what'd you do with that boredom? And I was like, I sat in it. I sat in it like I was a little kid without electronics yet and was just like, I gotta like tinker. I gotta go like be creative. I made a lot of like music mixes. I did a bunch of creative work, but in that process, it was like day in, day out on, it felt sort of like a dieta for people who know what that is. And as I was like bored and in that sort of emptiness after a couple months, one day I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I cannot wait for my first glass of water today. I have access to water and warmth and food, and I'm going to have a cup of coffee and I'm going to see my friend later. And then everything that was so mundane became fully resensitized because I had done the dopamine detox of healing from this pattern. And life became like this instead of the psychedelic trance and trip of limerence, I became awake to the psychedelic trance and trip of just simply being alive. And now that can't really, I don't believe truly, genuinely, that that will get taken from me because it's so anchored in. I embodied that so fully and sat in that so fully. The awakeness, the erotic nature of living, that sure, bring along someone that is, let's say, a secure, functioning partner. They're not going to want to pull me out of that. And I'm not going to really attract or want to be with anybody that would, because that's no longer, this is so good right here, right now. I don't actually I'm not looking for anything different than what is in my present moment reality. With all of the full spectrum life that it comes with, the pain, the sorrow, it's aliveness. It's aliveness, really. So I just thought that was one of the most like being bored was just, it was very, I thought it was going to be a lot of different things to be taking this love fast break, but primarily it was actually at first boredom. In fact, I did do it alone. Like if I was in a community in a container held by like me and you, I think that would have been a very different experience. But having you as an anchor and being able to water the seeds of my friendships and my sisterhood and my connections of people from all different genders was a huge part of my healing process coming alive again and ultimately bringing me back to my service here for God.
This is so beautiful. Thank you. And something that I'll add to that, the many different spectrums that we will experience in this container. And the boredom, it's like the acceptance that like boredom can be healthy. Like I can also be in a state of non-grasping for something. And let's just even call that mindfulness as well. And you literally waking up and getting ready for a glass of water, like how is that not a tantric experience? How is that not a sensual experience with life? And so really we're decentralizing sensuality as well. We're decentralizing eros. Because truly, whether you're making love to a glass of water or a song or your body in the morning when you're dancing or singing, whatever that might be, or you're tending to that business or you're tending to that project or that creative work that God is trying to live and channel and transmit through you. But when we're so turned to our crushes or situationships, and let me just tell you, a crush and a situationship
Is
is
a
not
lack of information.
is a lot of information and is also nothing in comparison to a sister, a best friend, or yourself, or a partner, a devoted partner who is actually by their very presence amplifying that very creativity or that very purpose and power that's trying to come through you. Whereas we can identify it's a situationship and it's a crush that's held in limerence that has not anchored itself when it feels actually extractive rather than generative.
Or when you're distracted. Like a really good like a really good way that I can identify when I look back on all of my limerent sort of like crush based, it wasn't true devotional partnership, was that in those connections, I felt distracted from my work. I wanted my work to be over. I wanted my creative, I wanted time to pass. Like I wasn't being oriented, even though they might not have said that I shouldn't be. The orientation of the connection, they weren't necessarily like in maybe their mission or they saw work as they just weren't, it wasn't an alignment. We didn't see, you know, one thing I was also realizing recently is that like for two people to really ground in their love or their lust or their connection, their relationship, you have to have enough of a shared perception because there's all different kinds of perceptions of reality. Some people might relate to work as just a means of making money to support their family, right? And that's their legacy. Other people, like we all have different orientations to reality, but I think one of the most important qualities to not get caught in preoccupied, obsessive, looping, endless processing and then having to process what the conversation was and then going to your friends and processing about that process. And that I can already identify as a sign that we don't share enough of a perception. We're not oriented and in alignment in our perception of reality. And we will forever try to be getting there to that kind of resonance. And that's going to distract me from the actual point of my path.
Yeah.
And so I think also identifying, does this pull me away from, and it's okay to get a little distracted. I don't want to vilify or that tendency of excitement. Like, of course, that's natural, that's human, but is it pulling me away from my life? Am I putting my whole life, my whole excitement, my whole world into whether or not this connection works out? And that's the limerence based pattern. That's how you know it's not a secure, functioning potential partnership. And you don't want to start there. If you start there, it will just chaos will ensue, a calamity will unfold. First, we have to start. If you start with limerence, it almost never really works out, no matter how deep the soulmate connection feels, because you're not actually assessing for what reality is showing you about the resonance of the bond. And can you land it?
And if you're not clear about what you envision for your life as an individual and like authentically stand by that,
Oh
how
my God.
can how can we check if another is living in shared vision with us? We might get wobbly or we might overlook things or be okay and get comfortable without really important needs met or really important markers of shared vision simply because the connection is so comforting, simply because the connection is satiating that part of us that is grasping for something because we're actually uncomfortable being with self or we're uncomfortable being present in tantric with life outside of partnership and dating. And so really why the love fast is so powerful, it's like it's getting clear on your somatic reality. It's getting clear on what patterns have led us here to this moment. What are we wanting to lay to the altar to transmute? And also, how can I stand by the type of life that I'm truly here to live, the type of destiny that I'm here to actualize, so that when I am ready to date, I have standards. You know, I have markers of do we have shared perspective? Do we have shared vision? And because I know myself so clearly, I know and I trust life so much that I know I would be deserving of receiving from life a partner that would mirror that which I have prayed for or stood in, firstly within myself. Yeah.
Because this is the thing. Love is partnership is part of life, just like eating food is part of life, just like seeing friends is part of life, just like dancing, just like sleeping. But imagine if you only focused on sleeping, or you only focused on eating, or you only focused on movement. These are parts of a whole of a life. And if we end up overly prioritizing romance and eros with another person rather than with life itself and all of these dimensions of our life, eventually once we get into partnership, it's not going to satiate the whole thing. You're eventually going to start asking questions like, wait, what is my legacy? And is it the aligned partnership that I'm in to carry that through? In my case, it wasn't. And that's why we want to get clear first and know self and know the calling and answer that, so that we can actually assess for whether this container of a pair bond, oh my God, it's such a big thing to share your life force energy. This is what I ultimately want to remind the femmes, the women of, is that like your life force energy is precious. And once you get a dose of that, and listen, I was in a 6-year partnership. And then, like, when I started feeling my own self, it was like, wait, like, do I actually want to share this with anyone right now? Like, anyone. It's like I like want to soak in all of my own selfhood because I'm made of love, and so are you, and so are you, and so are you. We are literally consciousness experiencing itself. Once you get a dose of that, you get real discerning about who you want to share that with, because when the mundane hits and you're not in that limerence anymore, and it's just day in, day out of living, and you have all of the information about this person and you're no longer in the mystery and you're just in a domestic partnership, is this person going to allow me to be radiant and expansive and soak in my own love for myself and life, or and for my legacy and mission, or are they going to distract me and make me feel preoccupied, and I'm going to feel that I have to choose between God or this attachment bond, which is not a fun place to be. Like, I was definitely there. And this is why I think cultivating that relationship to like legacy, self, and calling is so core and at the center of one's destiny, at the center of one's destiny. And to realize love is a massive part of that in an unconditional way. It's also totally inherent in that, but realizing partnered love that has conditions. You said it last night on our phone call. That requires discernment. It requires boundaries. And that's what this course is for. We're creating a 4-month boundary around something so that we can cultivate the center of one's destiny to realize love in a grounded way.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing in that component of a fast. With a fast comes abstinence. With a fast comes, let's hope, effortless discipline. With a fast comes devotion and intention and integrity. Sacred pause is to really be held within a community, be held within this field that we are co-creating. And we're so devoted to, we're both. Another intersection around the somatic based healing is also healthy family systems. And whether you want to be a parent or not, or you see parenting as the birthing of a project or birthing of your artistry, whatever way we want to look at it, right? Or for those who want to be parents, healthy individuals equals healthy couples, equals healthy parents, equals healthy children, equals healthy ancestral lines, equals healthy planet. And in a time where we are seeing so much obstruction on the planet, which is a result of untransmuted pain that's been rooted in colonization and passed down through generations with nowhere to resolve itself, more than ever is it so important on a planetary level that we really heal and get healthy, first and foremost within ourselves, and to really date and to create family and create life and community from that place.
I mean, can I say any more? Like, that's the point. That's the whole, I mean, it's like we didn't just come here to like get to like, it's, I mean, yeah, we came here to enjoy a lot of things, but we also came here to like be change makers and to like bring healing and love
While
while
enjoying.
enjoying, while enjoying.
We're
And
here to
that's
do. Yeah.
what evolutionary love in friendship, in relationship to spirit, and hopefully in partnership is here to bring us deeper into that mission, into that dharma.
Absolutely.
What a pull. So we begin March 14th to fast on our own love for 4 months. I want to bring some nuances in the
Yes.
sense that if you are still dating, if you are at the beginning of a relationship, the idea isn't that you can't join. It's that the idea is we will be prioritizing your relationship to self, to spirit, to community. So you can join if you are at the very beginning stages of a relationship. On the website, it writes who the course is for, or it says who the course is for and who the course isn't for. So people can get a sense at thelovefast.com.
Exactly. And you'll find all of those clickable things in the show notes. And yeah, we're looking forward to you joining us and applying and us beginning mid-March. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for your expertise and your wisdom and for co-creating this conversation and more importantly, co-creating this container with me. So incredibly excited, love. This is going to be incredible in so many ways for all of us.
We can't wait. And also just have had so much fun being in this process with ourselves. The
Exactly.
learning, the evolution, like I'm changed, I'm humbled. And that's why it's coming through to be like, oh, this has to be shared. This is like a technology that is life changing. Like it's single handed. Like I will never date or I mean, each day I'm orienting differently to life because of this and because of the time we spent together.
We're
Yeah.
literally living it. Both Gabrielle and I have just gotten out of this last year of major, massive, significant long term relationships. And really, the love fast is something that's been working us. And that's where this is coming from.
What a blessing. I can't wait to be in there with you. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast.